All right, so we have new ideas in this block. You've heard about the FBI. You know, they got these crime stats reports, and we've talked in the past about how they selectively edit it. And now it has become a bigger piece of news because somebody was trying to fact check somebody who's running for president. I guess it backfired a little bit. The next part is something I didn't think we'd have to cover, but we reported last week that there was a third assassination attempt on Trump. It was at a rally at Coachella, and it was early. I think it had just happened that day. And so by the time we end the show and you start seeing clips, there's a whole lot of reasonable doubt in that scenario. And it almost looks like an enterprising young sheriff who wants to make social media history purposefully misconstrued a situation that was probably not ambiguous to him whatsoever. And he saw an opportunity to get two birds with one stone, get in the media with this headline and also take a shot at Westphalian citizens. I'm sorry, sovereign citizens, people who assert that they have human rights equal to that of other people, which is a crazy argument. So you should never support stuff like that. It's dangerous. You get put on a list by Homeland Security and stuff like that. But the Westphalian system does apply to individuals. So if you figure that out. Anyway, that guy did a News Nation. So this is the first time you're going to see someone who's accused of assassinating a president actually doing media interviews and explaining his position and getting to put evidence out there, which I also just thought was an unusual bit of situation there. So we're going to take a look at all false allegations. Man arrested outside Trump rally, shares his details. And then James O'Keefe has a new piece out. Apparently, the good people over at Meta/Facebook, they're automagically for Kamala. And so if you are saying things other than that, they have some algorithms that'll just deep six you without you even knowing it. So we need to know about that. And then we have some more support for White Dudes for Harris because, you know, there are those on that side of the bell curve and they want to support her. All right, so let's go to the clips and dig into FBI changing crime stats for political purposes.
Donald Trump was correct in his debate when David Muir fact-checked him, I'll do air quotes for that, and said violent crime is down. Donald Trump said it's not being reported properly, and we have a bombshell report not right now. Real Clear Investigations has discovered the FBI has stealth edited its crime rates. They are way up, and we knew this. Anyone with an ounce of honesty in their body and the ability to do a Google search knew that the FBI was underreporting crimes in major cities because the police departments were not cooperating. And that's not even the half of it. Now the FBI quietly updates its numbers, saying nothing. Now here's where it gets crazy. Merrick Garland came out and praised the decline in crime rates. The White House came out and said, we are doing the work and crime is down. The whole time they knew that crime was up. And we're experiencing it. I don't believe for a second the economy is good. They are lying. And every single time we say something is incongruous with your statement and reality, they just say, that's just you. Let me tell you about violent crime. People are talking about it all over the place. Tren de Aragua in New York City. The media said that there was no apartment takeovers in Aurora, Colorado. Guess what? There were. Now they're saying, oh, but J.D. Vance, it's only a handful. Only a handful. Right. We are experiencing the crime. We are experiencing the bad economy, and they keep spitting in our faces and saying it's not true. Who are they lying to? You know, the economy thing is going to be interesting because I think that they're putting up these numbers. Republicans say it's not true. Donald Trump says it's not true. The media says, fact check, false. Donald Trump, you just lie all the time. And then, without saying a word, they update their numbers. Let's read the story here from Real Clear Investigations. Stealth edit. FBI quietly revises violent crime stats. When the FBI originally released the final crime data for 2022 in September of 23, it reported that the nation's violent crime rate fell by 2.1%. This quickly became and remains a Democratic Party talking point to counter Donald Trump's claim of soaring crime. But the FBI has quietly revised those numbers, releasing new data that shows violent crime increased by 4.5%. The new data includes thousands more murders, rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults. The Bureau, which has been at the center of partisan storms, made no mention of these revisions in its September 2024 press release. RCI discovered the change through a cryptic reference on the FBI website that states, quote, the 2022 violent crime rate that has been updated for inclusion in CIUS 2023. But there's no mention that the number increased. One only sees the change by downloading the FBI's new crime data and comparing it to the file released last year. After the FBI released its new crime data in September, a USA Today headline read, quote, violent crime dropped for third straight year in 2023, including murder and rape. It's been over 3 weeks since the FBI released the revised data. The Bureau's lack of acknowledgement or explanation about the significant change concerns researchers. Here's where I believe it is fair to say this is political. It was intentionally done by a corrupt DOJ to benefit the political elites in the Uniparty. Quote, I have checked the data on total violent crime from 2004 to 2022. Carl Moody, a professor at the College of William and Mary who specialized in studying crime, told Real Clear Investigations. There were no revisions from 04 to 2015. And from 16 to 20, there were small changes of less than 1 percentage point. The huge changes in 21 and 22, especially without an explanation, make it difficult to trust the FBI data. It's up to the FBI to explain what they have done. And they haven't explained these large changes, Dr. Thomas Marvel, the president of Just Tech Research, a criminal justice firm, told RCI. I believe that when you look at those quotes and that information, and you compare it, or I should say juxtapose it with the statements made by the White House and by Merrick Garland himself, it stands to reason the data was intentionally obfuscated so they could give themselves a pat on the back and claim they were doing their jobs when this country was burning to the ground. I know, fact check, says the journalist. Is the country really burning to the ground? No. It's a figure of speech, but that's the game they play. Donald Trump will say crime is soaring, and they'll say false. No, it isn't. It's up, but it's not soaring. Spare me your lies, dude. They say the actual changes in crimes are extensive. The updated data for 22 report that there were 80,000 more violent crimes than in 21. There were an additional 1,699 murders, 7,780 rapes, 33,000 robberies, 37,000 aggravated assaults. The question naturally arises, should the FBI's 2020, the question naturally arises, should the FBI's 2023 numbers be believed? Take a look at this. This is shocking. Violent crime rate, 80,029. Look at these. Without the increase, the drop in violent crime in 23 would have been less than half as large, only 1.6 instead of the reported drop of 3.5. The FBI isn't the only government agency that has been revising its data. The Bureau of Labor massively overestimated the number of jobs created during the year that ended in March by 818,000 people. I'm going to tell you right now. We know for the 23 data, which is the latest report, that it's missing around half of the police jurisdictions in major cities. So no, we cannot trust this. The FBI's crime stats revision reveal how much guesswork is involved in even the final numbers often seized on by politicians. The FBI doesn't simply count reported crimes. Instead, it offers estimates by extrapolating data from police departments that report only partial year data. The Bureau also makes estimates for cities that report no data. The FBI's method of generating these estimates range over time, and it affects the figures they report. The FBI processes, such as how it tries to estimate unreported figures, has long been a black box, even to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the DOJ's actual agency. Anderson said, when he headed for the Bureau of Justice Statistics, we definitely would have highlighted in a press release or report the 6.6% change recorded for 2022, which moved the numbers from a drop to a rise in violent crime. Another problem with FBI crime data is its reliance upon reported crimes. Most crimes go unreported. Now, this is where we can break down the manipulations. I think we have this, the Marshall Project from 2023, 4 reasons we should worry about missing crime data. The FBI's crime data is still incomplete, and politicians are taking advantage. The Marshall Project has been screaming this for some time, that they are not submitting the information. Take a look at this. 6,097 agencies submitted no 2022 data, 32% of all police agencies. When they come out and they say crime is down, we know they're lying, because what they're really saying is Police departments aren't reporting crimes. They can say that overall reported crimes are down. However, understand we haven't received all data on crimes, so this stat is meaningless. September 23, 2024. Statement from Vice President Harris on record declines in crime. All right, let's slow down. These are the 2023 numbers that have been revised, right? The violent crime drop in 2023. Now we're wondering about 2024. What Real Clear Investigations is saying is that without the increase, the drop in violent crime in 23 would have been less than half as large, only 1.6. Not a record by any means, but we are still presuming, based on this absurdity of 21 and 22's numbers being messed up, that 23 is also a lie. What Real Clear Investigations is saying is that now that we have new numbers on 2022, it shows the crime drop from the 23 report to 24 is half as large as they thought it was. However, they are further extrapolating, or at least entertaining the probability that the 23 numbers themselves are wrong. The 24 numbers are wrong. I'm sorry, I mean to say that they're now saying, look, if they were wrong in 21, 22, and 23, 2024 is going to be underreported, and we're not going to get the real numbers till later. Knowing, as the Marshall Project has stated already, that police agencies are not reporting this data, it is reasonable to conclude that crime is actually up, or at the very least stagnant, or even if it's down, it's only a little bit, right? Not record numbers. Kamala Harris put out this statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Every American and every community should have the freedom to live safe from violence, harm, fear. Yet before Biden and I took office, too many families were experiencing crime as our nation witnessed the highest increase in murders in recent history. That is why we immediately got to work in our counties, and this is all just manipulations. They put out this statement. Today's new data submitted to the FBI confirms. They say last year we saw the largest ever one-year decrease in the homicide rate, which now stands 16% below its 2020 level. Violent crime is at a near 50-year low. Our progress is continuing, blah, blah, blah. I can only conclude that as we have Merrick Garland and Kamala Harris coming out and saying, look at these fantastic numbers, and it's turning out it's not correct, it's false, and that the FBI only did this quietly with a stealth edit.
Okay, so now here to respond is the man himself, Vem Miller, the man arrested at the Trump rally over the weekend. Vem, thanks for coming on here. First, what did you think of what the sheriff had to say?
So I need to correct some inaccuracies in what was stated, including, I think, information that you shared. And I realized that you're being given information, and so let's vet some of that information. There was never a bail in this situation at all whatsoever. That is a lie. They're saying, I can't believe the sheriff even nodded his head when you mentioned the $5,000 bail, because it's non-existent. In fact, I have the ticket that they gave me right here in front of me. This is the ticket that they actually gave me. And this ticket cites two things on there. And those are essentially, so I'm coming from Nevada. I don't know much about the gun laws in California. I've never owned guns in California. I've owned guns in Nevada. In Nevada, you're allowed to have the mag loaded up in the gun. Apparently in California, they have to be separated. The other thing, and frankly, I've been very upfront in my interviews thus far, in the statement that I've released, I am a gun absolute novice. I'm like a kindergarten kid when it comes to gun. The only reason I have these guns is because I run something called the America Happens Network, where we produce over 800 episodes of content, a lot of it dealing with exposing corruption, exposing corrupt officials at americahappens.com. And within a lot of the content that we've done things certainly that show criminal elements within our judicial ranks, our lawyers, politicians, authorities in general that are not doing things according to law, that are operating within the color of law. And so when I have done that kind of work in 2022, I started receiving death threats, and these are documented via email.
Vem, just interrupt you here. Two things. One, I've heard you say that before, that it was for your protection. The first question I think a lot of people would have is, okay, but why did you bring these weapons, including a loaded handgun, the fake passports, what you, I imagine, will say is not fake press credentials, but a fake driver's license, all to this rally? You could understand why people would say that's strange and why you needed to be detained. That's the question. Why'd you bring it there?
So those are all false allegations. I didn't have fake passports; they were valid passports. I didn't have fake IDs. That's a false.
But are you saying this is being reported by multiple agencies, and including from the sheriff's office? You're saying everybody's getting it wrong about what happened?
The FBI and Secret Service have come out and said that I was no threat. They saw no threat. So they've been very clear.
There's a difference, though. There's a difference between you not being a threat, you not being an attempted assassin, versus you having illegally possessing weapons and having these faked documentation. Are you saying that part is not true?
That is 100% false.
So I'm putting this up here. You're saying the sheriff's office is essentially lying about what happened?
Oh, yeah, the sheriff's office is lying, and they're about to get hit with a lawsuit. The sheriff is going to be investigated. He's going to lose his position. The deputy sheriff that was part of this is going to be investigated. He's going to lose his position. There's going to be a massive lawsuit. And
Vem, the little ticket you put up, were you arrested?
No,
were you arrested?
I was arrested, yes. And
so what were you arrested for? If you say all this is, what was the charges you were arrested on?
So I was arrested for misdemeanors.
What were the misdemeanors?
Which is actually, you don't arrest people for misdemeanors. And this is why this process is completely and absolutely ridiculous. What they've said is absolutely ridiculous. I don't have fake IDs. And none of this is true. And this is demonstrably true. And if you want to hear what that is, I could demonstrate to you how it is demonstrably untrue. And you could have this little exclusive here showing that what they've said is untrue. And we're actually looking at a corrupt sheriff. We're looking at a sheriff that wants to be governor. He's trying to use this situation to basically boost his name. He has political aspirations. I know that for a fact. We've done our research. I run an organization called AmericaHappens.com where we've done investigative journalism for quite a while.
Just to bring you back here, are you saying that you were specifically targeted by the sheriff and law enforcement, or that you were picked up for a reason or being made a scapegoat?
I'm being made, whatever you call it, targeted, scapegoat, but nothing they did is lawful. I did not do anything that they're claiming I did. And it's provable, by the way. Do you want me to prove it? Will you give me a second?
I mean, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand then what you were arrested for.
I was arrested under false pretenses because you don't arrest people for misdemeanors. They ended up giving
I'm sorry, Vem, I'm an attorney. When you get arrested pursuant to some charge, not false pretenses. I don't mean to be rude. I'm trying to understand, because what you're saying is everything that's being reported is inaccurate. So were you or were you not arrested for possessing unregistered firearms and having a fake driver's license and fake IDs?
I was not having fake driver's license. I was not having fake IDs. And since you're an attorney, you should know about police corruption, something that's been going on, especially in Los Angeles, for example. There's a history of police corruption. When you go to downtown LA, there's a wall that literally apologizes for decades of police corruption. We've seen what happened at the LA riots. We've seen a lot of instances.
Vem, I have limited time with you. I want to bring you back here. There's something you mentioned. You had said that you have met the Trump family. You've met different members of the Trump family. I have a quote here, if I can bring it up, where you said, I've talked to Don Jr., I've talked to Eric Trump. I know a lot of people within the Trump family and the extended family, and I have been integrally involved. What do you mean you've been integrally involved?
So I'm a Trump caucus captain in Nevada. I ran for office in 2022 as a Trump-aligned candidate. I'm a Trump team captain, all which is evidenced by the evidence at hand. Everybody knows that I've been very involved in the Republican Party of Nevada, and I helped to get votes for the former president for his primary campaign. I've interviewed many people within his circle for pro-Trump policies, and I'm as involved as it is.
Has anybody from the family reached out to you and said, I'm so sorry this has happened? Have they made public statements in your defense?
Right now would be too early for that, because I'm sure people who are trying to figure out the truth within this mess of things that are flying around. But yes, once the truth settles, I'm very confident that I will have conversations with members of the Trump family and the extended family. Have
you spoken to lawyers about this lawsuit that you plan to file against the sheriff and the sheriff's office?
Well, no, lawyers have actually been reaching out to me, really very passionately wanting to get part of this lawsuit, because they realize I have a massive lawsuit. I've been worldwide defamed. My name's been destroyed. I go down to a coffee shop. People stare at me like they're looking at a monster because of all these false allegations, and they're demonstrably false. And just
to tie this up, are you saying categorically that you did not show up to that Trump rally with at least one loaded firearm?
So you are, at this point, you're kind of twisting it. Yes, not only did I told the sheriffs myself, this wasn't found out because the sheriffs went through my car and discovered it through some investigation. Because I'm a member of the Republican Party, when I go to rallies in Nevada, I'm very friendly with the police. I let them know that I have firearms in the back of my truck. They say, as long as you don't take it in a rally, it's fine, because the culture there is different. Over here, I did the exact same thing. I arrived at the rally. I go up. Wait, let me finish.
I hear you. I hear you. I guess just the question I would leave you with is, you know that there were 2 attempts on former President Donald Trump's life. Excuse me. Wouldn't you think that that is probably a cause for concern, even if you didn't know it was in the back? Maybe do a second check?
Cause for concern is one thing. Throwing out these insane, untrue, and just literally flat out lies about fake passports and all that stuff, that's a different thing. Calling somebody a potential assassin without having information. I mean, you're an attorney. You know what is the criminal threshold of standard, what you got to achieve in order to actually have a criminal standard and a civil standard, right? You know that, of course, because you're an attorney. When you don't have evidence to back up what you're saying and you're just spouting up stuff out of emotion, what do? You create liability. You create defamation. You pretty much ruin your position. You seem like an unhinged person when you have no evidence. And you would not walk into a courtroom without evidence. So that's how.
With all due respect, Vem, I have to tell you, it seems like this would be a lot of effort and a lot of things done on the part of law enforcement to target you, essentially, and make up these claims, when I think the other way of it is you might have been charged with misdemeanors. Whether or not you were released on bail or not is a separate question, but you were hit with these misdemeanors because you brought essentially illegal contraband with you. And it doesn't make you an assassin. It doesn't make you a threat. Clearly, the federal government, the federal law enforcement has come forward and said that you were not that. But I think there is more to the story, but I hear your side of it. And I appreciate you coming on to explain a little bit more about it. Vem Miller, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for watching. Say your uncle in Ohio said something about Kamala Harris is isn't unfit to be a president because he doesn't have a child. Okay. That kind of shit is automatically demoted.
Meet Jeevan Gowali, a senior software engineer at Meta.
Are they doing a good job protecting our democracy? Because I can see these right-wing groups setting up Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts for that matter, right? And just start posting disinformation, be like, Harris is blah, blah, blah.
That's all going to be demoted 100%. The civic classifier is strong.
The senior software engineer also goes on to say that, quote, the person would not be notified, unquote, if they were demoted because of their anti-Kamala Harris post on Meta, and red-listed, that's a new term we just learned, red-listed, meaning, according to Collins Dictionary, things that are not permitted.
Would the person who posted that would he be notified that?
The person would not be notified, but there's these things that what you collect is if a bunch of items that, if at least a couple of items that a person has created has violated civic classifier, then they're also red listed.
Our OMG American Swiper asked Jeevan if Meta was shadow banning users for their anti-Kamala Harris posts. Take a look at what he says.
So is that called shadow banning?
Shadow banning,
okay,
yeah.
So they will be shadow banned.
Correct.
They will never be shown. But so they will see a dip in impressions and engagement,
yeah.
But they would not be officially warned of the reason why.
Correct.
We asked Gowali if Meta has the ability to affect the upcoming 2024 election, to which he responded, yes, Meta does. Jeevan also confirmed that Mark Zuckerberg intends to help the Democrats in this election cycle.
You guys have the ability to influence the outcome of the election.
Yes.
Do you think Zuckerberg agrees? Good. Is he going to help the Democrats?
Yeah.
Meet Jeevan Gowali, a senior software engineer at Meta. Jeevan met our OMG undercover American Swiper on the dating app Bumble. In the meeting he had with our journalist, Jeevan describes internal workings of how Meta is dealing with misinformation on their platform. Jeevan talks about Meta's civic classifiers, a system that Meta has built through their integrity team to demote civic content. In other words, political content.
I mean, they try to take women's rights away.
I think,
like, how do you guys like control that hate speech?
There's a team called Integrity team.
Okay.
That's like a large portion of like, it's a pretty significant team, and they build all these classifiers. The base level of defense system that Facebook has built now is they have built these things called civic classifiers. Civic classifier is a really large model that's been trained on civic content.
Okay.
So anything that it detects to be a civic content is like demoted.
Civic classifier? Okay, what does that mean?
That means that if anything is related to political content, it's automatically like not shown.
We wanted to dive deeper into Meta's demotion of civic content, whatever that means, on their platform. The senior Meta software engineer Jiva states to our OMG American Swiper that they would, quote, automatically demote, unquote, content that might be critical of Kamala Harris.
Unconnected stuff is not going to show up in your feed. Like ads, I think can show up, and they probably have a whole different process of vetting ads.
Okay.
But like unconnected content, like say your uncle in like Ohio said something about like Kamala Harris isn't unfit to be a president because he doesn't have a child.
Okay.
That kind of shit is automatically demoted.
Now, if you remember back in 2019, we did a story about a Facebook insider that showed us internal practices being played out at Facebook regarding what they called deboosting as well, what was previously considered a conspiracy theory, now documented by this Facebook whistleblower that came out with us in 2019.
Every time I would see this deboost live stream kind of code on there.
And what does it mean when these documents say action deboost live distribution? What does the term deboost mean?
When I see reduce live distribution, it means preventing the distribution of this live feed.
And just 2 years after that, we got our hands on an insider tape that revealed Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and a top executive were punishing truth seekers.
I've been clear that we have a number of efforts to find people and we terminate people and pursue the recourse that we have when we identify them. And in this case, we did find them.
Now in 2024, Jeevan from Meta, previously Facebook, mentioning continued practices of demoting content just a few weeks before the presidential election. The senior software engineer also goes on to say that, quote, the person would not be notified, unquote, if they were demoted because of their anti-Kamala Harris post on Meta, and red-listed, that's a new term we just learned, red-listed, meaning, according to Collins Dictionary, things that are not permitted.
Would the person who posted that would he be notified that?
The person would not be notified, but there's these things that what you collect is like, if a bunch of items that, like if at least a couple of items that a person has created has violated civic classifier, then they're also red listed.
Our OMG American Swiper asked Jeevan if Meta was shadow banning users for their anti-Kamala Harris posts. Take a look at what he says.
So is that called shadow banning?
Shadow banning,
okay,
yeah.
So they will be shadow banned.
Correct.
They will never be shown. But so they will see a dip in like impressions and engagement, but they would not be like officially warned of the reason why.
Correct.
Jeevan Gowali is asked how the company is going to avoid a repeat of 2016 misinformation, and then he discloses that there is a SWAT team that's, quote, already set up since April.
I'm afraid that we're going to see a repeat of 2016 in 2024. I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm going to do it anyway. What is your company doing to prevent that from happening?
God. Well, it's like
how are you guys going to fight that?
Well, I mean, there is a SWAT team that's already set up since I think April to think about all the scenarios of how the platform could be abused.
The senior software engineer at Meta is asked about right-wing Meta accounts posting misinformation about Kamala Harris, and he states that these posts are, quote, all going to be demoted 100%. The civic classifier is strong, unquote.
Are they doing a good job protecting our democracy? Because I can see these like right-wing groups like setting up Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts for that matter. right, and just start posting disinformation, be like, Harris is like blah, blah, blah.
That's all going to be demoted 100%. The civic classifier is strong.
Just last week, we saw former 2016 Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton state that if Meta doesn't moderate and monitor users' content, then, quote, we lose total control. Watch this.
But if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
We asked Gawali if Meta has the ability to affect the upcoming 2024 primary election, to which he responded, yes, Meta does. Jeevan also confirmed that Mark Zuckerberg intends to help the Democrats in this election cycle.
You guys have the ability to influence the outcome of the election.
Yes.
Do you think Zuckerberg agrees? Good. Is he going to help the Democrats?
Yeah.
Oh, so he's like going to help the Democrats, right?
100%.
So we just reached out to Jeevan for comment. My name is James O'Keefe, and the girl works for me. And she recorded you. You're at Meta, and you're talking about. He said, and then he hung up the phone. So I guess the comment is off. And stay tuned, because tomorrow we have another Meta subject forthcoming. We have lineinthesandmovie.com, which redirects you to Tucker Carlson's website where you can stream Line in the Sand movie. We've got whistleblowers coming out. We got the Border Patrol agent in Vermont who's being summoned and disciplined for speaking about child trafficking. We have his back. Citizen Journalism Foundation is defending him, paying his legal bills. And if you work on the inside of any federal agency, any tech company, Disney, you name it, tips at o'keefemediagroup.com.
I used to be a Trump guy. I was MAGA all the way. But then Kamala started to make a lot of sense.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden, but also I'm not Donald Trump.
I realized for the first time that Kamala was right. She's not Joe Biden. And she's also not Trump. So I started to pay attention a little more. And the more I listened, the more I liked.
Does the U.S. have no sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu?
The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
So profound. Kamala will say absolutely nothing, but she will express this nothingness as if it is the most profound thing anyone has ever said. And that, I think, is what it truly means to sound presidential.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree.
It's time to do what we've been doing, and that time is every day. Wow. But what really sold me on the genius of Kamala is how brilliantly she dodges questions that she doesn't like.
Do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
Wow. Kamala has a truly astonishing way of expressing herself.
That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
So come on, guys. Let's all be unburdened by what has been.
Imagine, if you will, a world devoid of common sense. A world in which the nonsensical ramblings of an inarticulate moron are actually convincing. A world in which men vote for Kamala Harris. If you find yourself in such a world, take a moment to look around. You may have just wandered into the Twilight Zone.
Mr. Reagan.
All right, so we're about to get into the news block that has Operation Joyful Warrior. But before we get there, Scott, what did you think about what we just learned about what's going on in the world?
Oh man. Well, hey, that guy actually like looked and sounded like the Twilight Zone guy. I'm sure he gets that all the time. It's like, whoa, you look and sound like the Twilight Zone guy.
That's the guy who makes the Mr.
Yeah,
Reagan.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
made the connection. That's cool.
Yeah.
So much stuff in there. Okay, so yeah, the crime statistics thing is really shocking. I'll start there because that's something that I've been covering on my show. I've covered that a little bit. I looked up in the clip Genie. It looks like this show's been covering it quite a bit, and it's just so. I mean, we knew that on its face that these jurisdictions were not reporting crime, and they took that as a significant enough of a crime reduction that they can actually campaign on it. And so, again, all credibility lost. So, now I just see this as like such a great opportunity for, like, let's say there were an actual opposition instead of a controlled opposition and like a Republican establishment, that they would seize on that and you just attack viciously, boom, 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 nail them. And then there would be something to do it, but they're not going to do anything, as they always do, which, that's just the controlled opposition aspect of it. It's like they could if they wanted to, but they won't. And even if they did, like, nothing ever happened. So anyway, there's just that.
I think it's a great example of when you hear crime statistics, government statistics in general, you should ask the question, is that true? What do they want me to believe? They want me to believe from this report that Kamala is doing this thing to like lower migration or lower crime. Is that really true? Because if they're trying to deceive you with that information, I think that's more important than the information itself, because they're trying to take away your freedom. And they do this on a regular basis. So if we take the time to say, what are they trying to make people believe with that poll or with that statistical crime report or economic report, that's where they usually are trying to steer the herd. So the poll that they're showing you on MSNBC or CNN or Fox isn't necessarily what people think. They're like, which information steers people in the direction we're trying to get them, right? Like, for instance, on this show, we're not completely objective. We do have an agenda. We favor freedom over slavery. That's a broad spectrum. It allows us to do a lot of things within those boundaries. These other places are like, we can only support red team or blue team. So they have to exclude anything that kind of is part of the reality that doesn't fit that narrative. And that's not a good way to steer an individual, let alone a country.
No,
it's kind of weak. It's pretty weak. It's pretty weak. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. And then, okay, so I have a lot to say about the Vem Miller third assassination attempt situation. So
I don't see why that lawyer guy was so confused, because basically the guy said he went from Nevada to California with loaded guns in the car and basically only got hit with misdemeanors. But they did arrest him, but you don't arrest people for misdemeanors, usually. And that they didn't have bail, which I thought was interesting. I thought they had released him on bail. So a whole bunch of things don't add up. But instead of understanding that, the lawyer dude was like, well, you did go to an event with loaded guns. That was basically what he did. He didn't get out of the car with the guns. Like, that was what the report was last week when we reported. People were like, oh, it's like another attempted assassination type of situation.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, once the fog clears, it's like there's more questions. That guy might be a little bit suspect, and he had, like, his own homemade license plates on his car and stuff like that. But I thought he said his passport was like Albanian or something like that. Like, he has heritage. So it's a thing. It's just that podunk sheriff didn't recognize foreign country type stuff. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know Albania as a country. Maybe I'm wrong which country it was, but it was over there in that area.
Maybe. Yeah. And then,
maybe.
Yeah. And so my connection is, I actually have a connection with this guy, and a little bit.
Your picture taken with him like everybody else?
I don't think we did a picture, but I did meet him. Shelby and I met him at Freedom Fest. So he was at Freedom Fest, which is in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And so America Happens, I was like, oh, I know that outlet. And so there's another correspondent that works for America Happens named Corinne Clifford, who I met at an InfoWars event in 2022. And I showed her Unjected. I was like, yeah, we got this dating app for unvaccinated people. And she's like, what? And she thought it was super cool. I helped her sign up. So I reached out to her to have her come on the show, and she was too busy. And then Shelby had Vem's number from meeting him at Freedom Fest. And so we reached out to him, and we're like, bro, what's going on? Like, you want to come on the show? So we had him booked on the Unjected show this week, but he had to cancel last minute, wasn't able to make it. But yeah, I listened to his statement on the America Happens network, and hearing his side of the story, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Really the only crime he was guilty of was being
in California.
Being armed like a constitutional, like within the confines of the Constitution, but in California, right? So, and you know, there's all the speculation, and so his story, he's like, I was doing what a responsible gun owner does. Like, there's question, you know, whether or not I think it's up for debate. Like, if you're a concealed carry owner and you get
it's the it's the thing that when dealing with law enforcement, do you let them know voluntarily, or do they find out accidentally and think the worst?
Exactly.
So he rolled up. He's like, "Hey, howdy, dude. I got some stuff in the car, but I'm not bringing it into the event." And they're like, "Red alert! Red alert!"
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So, you mean that is a topic for debate? Some people say no, you don't need to say anything. Some people say just out of common courtesy and just to avoid a hostile situation, potentially you let them know that, you know, I have a firearm. If you want to secure it before we continue this conversation, you know, I'd be happy to do all that. You know what I mean? But so to me, it seems like he was trying to do the responsible thing. But
However, he does claim in one of his interviews to have never fired a firearm.
I've heard him say that. So
I don't think you are a responsible firearms owner if you are leaving loaded firearms in an unprotected car for any duration of time like that. That's a no-go situation. So I know you want to protect yourself, but you're not if you don't have experience.
Yep, I agree with you there on that for sure. So anyway, and then so I see how. So his claim is that, you know, the sheriff's department is blowing it up for their own perverse incentives, but then also you have like any Trump supporting media or the Trump campaign themselves. This is something that they can really blow up and rally on and use to their advantage, you know. So I can see how there's incentives to blow that story up from within you know, the right or whatever. So it's just an interesting story, you know, and I see him doing a lot, you know, he's really leaning into the poor me victim aspect of it, but I see how he was legitimately wronged. But it's like one of those things, it's like where I can see a little bit how, like, he's set himself up for a big lawsuit. That's what I'm saying. It's like LeBron James just gets like nudged a little bit and he's like, goes flying down, like that sort of thing. So, but I'm not blaming him, you know. Hey, I hope he gets $1 billion out of it. You know what I mean? So there you go.
Debt notes from California. I don't know if those are going to be floating anytime in the future. I did want to, I know we passed this section like 20 minutes ago, but I forgot to do it, but I'm going to do it now. I have a buddy, his name's Ron, and he called about a week ago and said he was trailering up and he's got his truck loaded with tarps and nails and screws and all sorts of fasteners and hinges and all the sorts of stuff you need to put life back together. And he was trying to make a plan because Ron doesn't have like a big social network. He's like, I want to do this thing and I'm going down there, but I don't know how to draw support. So I said, first you come up with a plan, and then you find some people on the ground that you can communicate with so you know where you're going and what you need, what you are bringing is needed and wanted, because some places are like all full up, right? So you got to find the place that's still in need. So anyway, I said, when you get all that done, create a GoFundMe and I will circulate it. And I circulated it, and many other people have contributed to the campaign, including Scott and LD. I saw them on the list, and it's not mandatory, but if you want to help, and if you've been thinking about North Carolina and the people who are going into winter without structures and without FEMA and, you know, those sort of things, this is a place where Ron's on his way down this week. I think he's leaving Monday or Tuesday. And even though it's 3 weeks in, it's 21 days in, there's still a lot of people that don't have their life back and they're in need, and all the media attention has gone away. So I did what I could to support his endeavor, and many friends like Robert Christie. I haven't heard from him in quite a while, and I was very pleased and proud to see names like his on the list, because this is where we can all come together and do a little thing and make a big difference. So that's awesome. And I would say too, you know, just share it too. You know what I mean? Like, if you guys are in a position, just share it. That really goes a long way. You know, just share it on all your platforms. So I shared it. I contributed a little bit, but like, yeah, it's things like this. This is where we can make a difference on a local level, man. Like, if FEMA ain't gonna do it, it's up to us. Sharing is caring, as they say.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures, they're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man.
No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come